and welcome back to the TBM crew. Today I'm with William Vanstone and Frank Thayer from the Suncross Publications. Hello, how are you?
I am great.
I'm so happy to have you here today. I really want people to know about your books, because they are very special.
Okay, Mar.
Yes.
Let me tell you about my books since 2015. My first book was called the Cobston Trilogy. Cobston Trilogy is it's set in Canada, and it goes through 3 generations of a horror that visited a small town there. And the book is illustrated. It was inspired by a 17th century essay by an academic talking about the dead who chew in their graves.
Wow.
And I even included a facsimile of that complete treatise that I got from the British Museum.
Wow.
And it's just old black letter stuff, hard to read, but it so impressed me that I began to think of what if in this town there was a horror buried under the ground, and it destroyed 3 generations basically before it was destroyed itself. It started out in 1918, 1919, came back in 1970, and then again in 2000. And we had 3 different main characters, and each one of them has a romance in his generation. And 2 of them were sad, and the third one worked out pretty well, unlike real life. And here is one of the painting that was done for the interior of the book. This is the California artist, and it's pretty creepy. And so that was the 2015 book. And after that came Terror Tales of the Southwest.
Yes.
Now this book is a series of short stories, and the first one is The Horror of the Yellow Flowers. And Graham Kennedy, who did the covers for all my books, he did this drawing for the inside of the...
It's beautiful.
And again, it has 3 different women and a horrible thing that's related to all of them one way or another. But you have to read the book to find out. And it takes place in the Southwest. And the other stories in this book include a terrible thing based on murders in Juarez, Mexico. And back in the 1980s, hundreds of women were found slain and left outside of Juarez, which is one of the most violent cities in the world. And I began to think of the werewolf connection. And so it ended up with this academic and his wannabe girlfriend. Well, he wants her to be his girlfriend, but she turns out that her family has a terrible occult history. And finally, she wants him to help her, as not knowing that you cannot rescue anybody. We've learned that, right? And so they end up in this old house in South El Paso, Texas, and where in the basement, there's this ritual going on. And it turns out that this werewolf is actually her grandfather. And it's just a violent confrontation. They end up bringing armed forces in, destroying the whole house, and wiping out the werewolf cult, where they were all meeting down below. And it was a very grisly fight at the end. And so he takes her back to her own apartment, and he goes back realizing that you don't marry a girl, you also marry her family. And that would be some family for him to be a part of. And there's a couple of other, and at the very end, There are two stories that are actually pulp stories. This is
Yes.
Third Rocket to Venus.
Mm-hmm.
And in the old days, before most of you were around, they had what we call pulp magazine.
Yes.
And all these science fiction magazines, people were traveling by rocket to Venus and Mars and all sorts of places. And
Yes.
this is one of those stories written in that vein. And of course, there's a romance and there's terrible Venusian creatures in this steamy hothouse planet. And it was so much fun to write. I loved it. And the next year, we came up with this book,
Yes.
The Whispering Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is a ghost town in New Mexico. It really existed.
Okay.
It still exists, as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
And I had a photo gallery. I had a photo gallery up there at that particular ghost town, and it's the cover doesn't show everything, but here is. I wish I could find that real quick. There it is. This was my photo gallery with. I was married to a girl, and we went up there, and it was up in the mountains. I mean, you go up, 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 down, and it's an isolated little ghost town, perfect for a horror story.
That's
and it
perfect.
turns out that alien creatures went into the mine, the abandoned mine in this ghost town, and they came out and they attacked people who lived there, and it goes on and on. And finally, it goes back down to the city I call San Vicente, which is really a town where I lived in most of my life. And finally, they don't destroy the aliens. The aliens do so much damage, and then at the last, they see the flying saucer going up into the sky and disappearing. And it was a fun story to write, and it's based in a real place that I spent a lot of time in, and
I can imagine.
And that was a lot of fun to write, like I say. But I think it's an exciting story. The main character has major flaws, but that's very real in our lives.
Yes, we all do. Yes.
Yes, and that was. Then came 2020.
Yes.
And this is the one. This is the vampire story. This is my longest work. 267 pages thereof, and I wanted it to be a real vampire story because they are real. There is and has been such a thing as the vampire, an undead creature or a living creature who will become undead because the vampire learns to live on the vital forces of the human being.
Yeah.
And it's not just sucking blood. This is just, this romanticizes it, the Dracula story. Yeah. So we have in this town, San Vicente again, that this vampire had been there for years and years and years. And nobody even knew how old he was. But he wasn't handsome and wearing good clothes. He was a grisly, old, shrunken man that everybody was afraid of. Yeah. And we have the main character who was actually working in the city government, and he was a water systems engineer. And he gets onto this, and he finds, as he cheats on his wife and begins to meets a college girl at the same time, a very sordid affair, but it's not really, because he's honest about it, and he just doesn't even know what's happening to him. That sounds like real men to me. And it's so eventually he finds more and more about this vampire and ends up with a major confrontation. And he and his friends find out that this vampire guy dies, and how they find him and what happens to him after he dies. That's the nexus of the story. Again, it took a couple of years to write, but it's a very extensive.
So can I add something, Frank, that this vampire you're talking about would be more along the lines of a Nosferatu kind of vampire, as opposed to like a Dracula one? Just to, yeah.
And the cover reflects that. Now the cover shows a Nosferatu type of character. And because I didn't want to have a romantic count that women fall in love with. This is somebody who assaults people and takes their life force right out of them. And that's the one, if anybody reads one of my books, that's the one that probably is, they should be reading. The next year, 2021, A Taste of Salt.
Yes.
A Taste of Salt takes place in Canada again. And this picture of the cover,
yes,
I took that photograph in 1967, and it was an old church in an almost abandoned town in Canada. And it was so inspiring that I wrote the first draft of the novel in the 1960s on a typewriter and never did anything with it. And I came back after Suncross got rolling, and I finished the story, and it is written in the style of the 1960s, where you had communes and you had idealistic people who wanted to leave the city life and go live in the country. And in this story, you have an army of degenerate creatures that were human, but they went down the evolutionary scale instead of up. And the theme was that civilization had become so mechanized that the evil in it had gotten into people and turned them away from what I consider to be human. But I was very idealistic there. I still am, of course, but it was a fun story to write, and based on a photograph. And so, and I remember when I started writing it, I was in a little house on a farm next door to some very nice old farmers. And I think what I did, I typed that in that house, and that house and that farm and those neighbors are in the story. Terrible things happen to everybody, just about. But to me, it was frightening to sit in that old farmhouse at night. I even had a kerosene lamp to turn off the electric lights and write by this kerosene lamp. So again, I'm not a realist, I'm a romantic. And so that was that. And so those are the major books that I'm
so Frank, if I might add, so what would be the kinds of themes, like with the reader, what would they get out of it, and really what ties them all together? What would you say would be like the main message of somebody, not to spoil everything, but what would the reader get out of it if they were to read all?
We're looking at all these books, and what we have is a sense, what I call cosmic horror, that there's not just terrible things that happen to people in grisly fate, but rather that there is another reality. First of all, consciousness is not bedded in the human organism. It exists separate from it. And that's why we all have a tradition of afterlife. But they aren't always good. They're bad afterlives and good afterlives. And so every one of these books has a cosmic horror connection, that just beyond our reality, just beyond the horizon, we have worlds that we can't even imagine. And in our fiction, we're trying to resurrect it and let people have a sense of what it is, both good and evil. That make it?
Wow. I think people have a lot to find in your books. Now, with everything you told us, I'm wondering, I think your books have a lot to be with yourself and with everything you've learned, everything you have studied and searched and everything. Are you attached to any of your characters? Do you have one that you're fond of?
I don't know. I think I do see myself in most of those stories.
Okay.
And it's if you look at the protagonist in every story, you'll see something of myself and how I view the world, and my romantic hopes and my desire to learn about things that should not exist but probably do. And so that if you read my books, you will probably see me one way or another in every story.
Yeah. I think your books are very special exactly because of that. Because
Well, thank
you
you.
really pour yourself in them, right?
Yes, yes. It's like almost a volcano that comes out of me and goes into the stories. And I can see myself, I live the story as I write it. And I don't know what's going to happen. Some people say, well, the writer, you have it all planned out, you have a little map.
Yeah.
No, I am often surprised at what happens inside a story. And you get very excited. You hope for the characters, you fear for the characters. And when it comes to an end or to the final page, you're either very happy or sort of have mixed sadness with it. And I do hope that people will read the books, and I hope they will be enlightened and encouraged about the whole process of existence through horror. I think it can happen.
That's an amazing bridge.
Yeah, definitely.
I think you're providing a bridge, right? For people, right? And William, are you anyhow influenced or linked to Frank's vision of the cosmic horror and the writing process?
I am. However, with mine, I take it in a different direction. But yeah,
Okay.
I've been with Frank really since Cobston. And that started off, I'd say it would have been about 2007. I helped him do the early drafts, that short story, took it to Cafe Press, made like a printed book, and then went from there. So I've been.
Still have that. I still have that private
pretty much.
Yeah.
Really?
So,
yes.
Yeah.
And that I needed that encouragement, and William certainly has supported me all those years, and it did turn out pretty well. And if we can just get people to read these things, I think they would feel that it was their money well spent, because we certainly put a lot of investment into Suncross and into these books. As you can tell, they're very high quality.
Yeah.
They have illustrations, and they're not cheap, but they're not really expensive either.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, William, your books are so special as well, right?
Originally, I put it on the website, and you'll see it's there, $15. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm giving it away for free. I'm also looking, it's about 95% done, the new version that I've done. I'm also looking for beta testers, like beta readers.
Okay.
So I got about 5 people so far, basically just telling me what they think. And originally my story started off as an idea I had about, we had a writer's craft guide. So like advice about writing tips. And so then I took that and incorporated, and basically there was the story that I read called Samson and the Wizard.
Yes.
And it was like a how-to book. So it had these rules for life, and the story was like a demonstration of these rules. So I think of my story as like a manual for that. And it's about guilt and redemption, to put it succinctly as possible. And some events that happened to myself that I'm not particularly totally ashamed of, but I'm not very proud of. It was a very low point in my life. And I'm being honest, it's why I don't reveal, my real identity. But basically, a group of people that I was involved with, 2 women, actually, schizophrenic, narcissistic. And I found this all out after the fact. And basically, a love triangle, sort of. That insert of the story is a parallel with this character that's a biker, and it's basically werewolves versus vampires. So it's sort of, it's a difficult subject matter, but there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's very unusual. I've resurrected in my changing of the story, like it's this new version. It's going to be HTML. It's a choose your own adventure book, right? So from the 80s, 90s, that was a very popular genre. So there's 4 different endings. You make a bunch of different choices. And that's basically it. And then you find out things related to what I just went into. And, you have the werewolf vampire conflict, and who's a werewolf, who's the vampire. There's a mystery there. Like it's very, the early narrative of it's very deceptive. Like it gives perhaps the wrong impression. But then once you read, I've wrote like some, it comes with additionally with some essays in it.
Yes.
And once you understand, have read those essays, you realize you were tricked the entire time, that it was basically, it was a ruse. But I don't want to go into 2 minutes because I'm going to spoil the book. But
Yeah, of course.
yeah, I think appearances can be deceptive. So yeah, that's basically it. I'm not really sure what else to say, but because I don't want to spoil it.
That sounds so fun and so interesting. I mean, as a horror fan, I mean, the fact that you can interact and that you can choose, and that, I mean, I remember this kind of, well, when I was little, I remember there was this kind of tales that you could choose, but where you're going. So I think it's so interesting what you're bringing to the table, and even more if it's so personal, just as Frank was saying, when you have your heart in something, right? It just it's much more intense and emotional. So I'm sure the horror fans are going to appreciate your
It is
effort on
definitely,
that
yes,
project.
they definitely would appreciate it, but it is for mature audiences. It gets into a lot of nasty stuff. Again, as I said, it's kind of deceptive, but yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. It's very, if you're conservative or if you're woke, you'll be pretty offended by it. Like, it is pretty, it gets into some nasty stuff. And also, basically, it was my free therapist, my free psychiatrist, and that's why I poured it in. And I put it initially on the website for $15 because I didn't want anybody to read it, really. I didn't want anybody to buy it. And to me, it doesn't feel right, anybody paying, because the subject matter is kind of sinful. I don't feel that I'm giving it away for free. Frank's stuff, yeah, you got to buy, and his stuff was, you're actually getting, physical copies. Mine's just a digital file, and the tool that I used to create it, called Twine, well, this is from my newer version, is a freely available software. So I feel kind of like a fraud charging for it. But yeah, really, it was just for therapy and all that. So,
well,
yeah.
And William, they can go to the Suncross site and click on it right now. I mean, it's available for them. This is really great.
I feel well, actually, no, it's still the version that you have to buy. As I said, it's about 95% of the way there done. I'm still looking for beta readers before I really formally put it on the website. But yeah, it'll be on the website, where basically you just get a password and you go look on it. So it's going to be basically a self-contained on our website. So it's not an actual physical book or anything, because it was with the choose your own adventure, the different karma choices that you make and everything, too complicated to put it into print. So yeah, but that's coming soon. You'll see if you go on the website now, it's still the old version of the story, which you got to pay $15. But again, I did it that way because I didn't really want anybody to buy it. So at that time, now that I've come up with a better version and all that. So
yes. And Frank.
I'm such a Neanderthal that William is so far beyond me in the evolution of storytelling. I just have a book, and I go back to the 20th century, and I still see the story should be between covers, and you open it up with the bedside light on and read the pages. But with Williams, you get choice of endings. You get different ways of seeing the story from different aspects. So there's lots to see on the Suncross site for sure.
Yes, exactly. It's like a kind of video game, if you think of it. I mean, it's just, you choose, you make your own choices. And who do you think is the perfect reader for this project in the horror community?
Well, for mine, I would say anybody interested in horror B movies, because I wrote it kind of to be like Plan 9 from outer space. Basically, it's so bad that it's good. So there's a lot of, I reference a lot of B movie stuff, Russ Meyer's sexploitation films, drive-in movies. I'm really big into those. Not gore exactly, but just sort of like where it's cheesy, kind of. Yes. I also like a lot of weird, edgy humor. So edgy, weird, nerd, weird people like myself. Also anybody into film, any kind of film noir and westerns. I watched a lot of really old movies when I was a kid, like a lot. So the dialogue is kind of like a film noir, like they say a lot of really crusty. I don't want to spoil it. I want you to just shut up and go read it. But
Yes.
yeah. So it's film noir and westerns, B movies. And then I do the cosmic horror element of mine, different from Frank's, is just conflict with time.
Yeah.
Well, I spoke
Yes.
of maybe last time, time loops, that kind of thing. There's a weird time loop thing that I'm getting into. Again, I don't want to spoil all of it, but yeah, that's basically my style. So mine's a bit more eclectic than Frank's. Frank's is
Yes.
definitely more traditional, but he
Yes.
does really do the genre well. Like mine is, kind of sloppier, I guess. Yeah, in that way, the narrative anyway. Yeah.
Well, and as for my perfect reader,
Yes.
I don't take myself very seriously, but my stories take themselves very seriously.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for the traditional horror reader who's read all the traditional writers going all the way back to the beginning of the horror genre, whether it's Bram Stoker or H.P. Lovecraft, and not so much Stephen King, but it's the traditional writer, people that you've read all your lives. And I'm saying, I'm in here. I believe this stuff. When you're reading my story, you got to believe what's happening. So we have a different type of reader that we're looking for. And that's nice. A table should be set with more than one entree.
Absolutely. And I think you grab a wide audience precisely because of that. Right?
We
Because
hope so.
Yes, I think, William, you made me think of, because I don't know if you've watched all these kind of movies, but I've watched all these cheesy movies of the Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and all these
Yeah, that's
kind
a
of.
good one.
You've
Yeah,
seen
right?
that one.
Yeah,
I mean,
right
I'm
on.
that kind of horror fan that has watched all these things. So I can really get what you mean. And I think that anyone can get a spot in your spectrum of horror. So I'm so looking forward to your project, William, because I think we're going to enjoy it so much.
Very soon it'll be done. It's like I said, it's about 98% of the way there. I just have a couple people proofreading it, a bit of polish, and then I'll be sending it over to you guys, and it'll be made available free on the website.
Okay.
Really, I would just ask you could give me a donation in the form of a review. I'd love any kind of reviews, any kind of feedback. And again, it's free and it serves basically as our writer's craft guide now. So then that comes with the Frank bundle offer, but really it'll be my story that's going to be in the bundle as the writer's craft guide, and it'll teach you how to write a better story too. So yeah.
Right, good idea. Oh, can I mention something, Mar?
Of course.
I'm finishing a book right now that is not supernatural horror. William says he's going to design it for me. I just have to rewrite a couple of pages and put the back cover on it.
Okay.
And it is called The Quantum Jump Machine.
Oh.
And it's the horrible
Okay.
nature. It really happened. I mean, when I first got a college teaching job in Toronto,
Yes.
that I was a department head at age 25 and so on. But the people I saw in this college were so outrageous. And I took very good notes. And the story it's just funny. The people are fools, including the author. And the way it was a brand new college and everything had to start from scratch. But I think it will be fun for people to read. And it's not horror, but you'll say, how could these people do these things?
It is a
Yeah.
very funny book, and that was originally with Writers Cramp Press, which is based out of Toronto.
Yes.
And I don't think they exist anymore. But yeah,
No.
you did that. We have Writers Cramp Press. I guess just putting that out there if anybody's heard of that. I mean,
Right. But you know the
Yeah.
story because you saw it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
helped you with the editing and all that, doing that way back. But yeah, it's a good one. And yeah, it has a new cover, and he's working on that. And I'll be more updates in the future about that. Should be fairly
And-
in a couple of months or so.
Okay.
And though I'll
so
never admit it, every person in that book is a real person whose name has been changed.
To
And
protect
some
the
of them-
innocent. Yeah.
okay.
And there were no innocents in that book.
Just like my story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, that's for coming up, hopefully by the end of the summer.
Okay, so you have amazing projects going on, which are going to be available very soon, right?
Right.
Yes. So, and it's so lovely talking to you, but we run out of time. I'm so thank you so much for being here with me. It's so amazing to hear to you. Really, I love our talks. And I really encourage everyone to check out all your content. And I'm so looking forward to your new project, William. I'm sure it's gonna be amazing.
Oh yes, definitely stay tuned for that. It should be really in the next week or two. I should have it out.
Awesome.
I'm waiting on some feedback
That's so
from some
soon.
people with the final touches, and then that's it. So
Awesome. Then we'll stay all updated on that. And thank you so much for being here with me today.
oh, you're very welcome.
Thank
And
you.
I guess I don't know when we'll be coming back, but maybe around Halloween or September or something like that. We'll see.
Okay. Okay. Then thank you so much and have a lovely night. Well, night for me, not for you. Day for you. Right?
Yes, definitely. Same to you. And I'll be in touch with over email or whatever.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Then thank you so much and have a lovely one.
Yeah, same to you. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.